1G, the first mobile networks did exactly one thing. You could make a phone call, no texts, no data, no internet, just your voice compressed and flung through the air between towers, reaching someone on the other side of the city, without a wire for the first time. That was it. That was the whole product. Think of it like a tin can telephone stretched across the country. It worked, but it was fragile. Anyone with the right radio scanner could listen in, and coverage outside major cities was barely a rumor. Calls dropped, signals wandered. The handsets were the size of a house brick and weighed about as much. Battery life was measured in minutes, not hours. Carrying one wasn't convenience so much as commitment. And yet people did carry them, because the alternative was finding a payphone, or waiting until you got home, or simply not being reachable at all. The 1G phone was expensive, awkward, and unreliable, and people still queued for them. That tells you something about how badly the world wanted to cut the cord. As you can see here, the capability list is short. One generation, one feature. But that one feature cracked open something that couldn't be closed again, the idea that you didn't need to be near a landline to speak to someone across the city. Every generation after it is built on that premise. The trade-off that made the next generation inevitable: no privacy, no texts, no data, and a network that buckled under volume. Once people had mobile voice, they started wanting more from it. 2G, two things arrived with second-generation networks in the early 90s that changed mobile permanently. Calls went digital, and the network got a second trick. The text message. Digital voice meant encryption. No more scanning the airwaves for someone else's conversation. Cleaner audio, more calls per tower, coverage that stretched further on the same power. Real improvements. But the SMS was the sleeper hit nobody predicted. Nobody foresaw that people would choose to tap out messages on a 9-key pad rather than just ring. And yet, if you've ever sent a message to say you're running 5 minutes late, that reflex was born here. An entire generation learned to communicate in fragments because of it. Shorthand, abbreviations. The art of saying something meaningful in 160 characters. All of that started here, on a network that was never designed to carry it. If 1G was a tin can telephone, 2G was a proper postal system. Private, reliable, and suddenly capable of carrying something other than your voice. It proved such a durable architecture that parts of regional networks still run on it today, not for human conversations, but as the quiet backbone behind remote sensors, water meters, and alarm systems. A 90s infrastructure still earning its keep 3 decades on. The network also bolted on a data layer called GPRS, technically mobile internet, practically the experience of receiving one page of a website every 30 seconds. Data the way dial-up was data. Technically true. Practically a test of patience. Most people tried it once, watched the progress bar inch across the screen, and went back to waiting until they got home. The limit that forced the next generation wasn't voice, it was data. The world was starting to build things that needed a real connection, and GPRS couldn't carry the weight. 3G, third generation networks had one job: make the internet actually work on a phone. And for a while they did. Sort of. The App Store launched on 3G. So did Google Maps. So did the first wave of social media on mobile. The original iPhone launched into a 3G world, and that combination, a proper touchscreen with a network capable of carrying real data, is the moment the smartphone era went from interesting to inevitable. Take a look at the app landscape in 2008. That's 3G doing the heavy lifting. If 2G data was a drinking straw, technically water moving but functionally insufficient, 3G was a garden hose, not a fire hose, but enough pressure to actually get something done. You could load a web page, send an email with an attachment, check the score from a pub instead of waiting until you got home. People stopped printing directions before leaving the house. Strangers stopped asking strangers for directions at all. For the first time, having the internet in your pocket meant something beyond checking your email. It also quietly changed behavior in ways nobody was tracking at the time. People stopped memorizing phone numbers. They stopped knowing the address of the place they were going until 5 minutes before they arrived. Information that used to live in your head migrated to the network, because the network was now reliable enough to hold it. The honest ceiling showed up the moment anything demanding appeared. A video call, a sustained stream, anything larger than a photo, and 3G hits a wall. Pages that loaded fine standing still would stall the moment you walked into a building. It showed you what mobile internet could feel like, then spent the next few years reminding you it wasn't quite there yet. 4G, fourth generation mobile, didn't just improve on 3G. It made the thing 3G had promised actually real. Speeds jumped by a factor of 10 or more in real-world conditions. Latency dropped low enough that video calls stopped feeling like watching someone mime through a frozen window. Streaming worked, navigation worked, rideshare apps, food delivery, mobile banking. Everything that now reads as a basic utility of modern life was built on 4G's back. The smartphone stopped being a device you used occasionally and became something most people reached for more than 100 times a day. The gap between 3G and 4G isn't subtle. One buffers for half a minute, the other just plays. 4G also quietly ended a few things. The video rental shop, the paper map in the glove box, the standalone GPS unit, all made redundant by a network fast enough to put everything on demand, available the moment you needed it, wherever you happened to be standing. These weren't technologies that lost to competition. They were technologies that simply stopped being necessary almost overnight without much ceremony. There's a version of this that sounds like loss, and maybe it is. But what replaced them was the ability to find a restaurant, hail a car, transfer money, watch a film, and settle an argument about who won an Oscar, all from a bench in a park. That trade happened so fast most people didn't notice it was a trade at all. The one ceiling it couldn't solve was volume. Pack enough devices into a stadium or a city center at lunch, and the network strains under their weight. That congestion problem is exactly the gap the next generation was built to close. 5G, fifth generation mobile, is two very different networks bearing the same name, and which one you're on determines almost everything about what it can actually do for you. Sub 6 GHz 5G covers most metro areas and behaves like very good 4G. Modest speed improvement, solid coverage, available on most modern handsets. You might already be on it without noticing much difference. Then there's millimeter wave 5G, speeds that make home broadband look slow, but a range so short it barely clears a closed window. If we put these two side by side, one is a wide river and the other is a pressure washer. One covers a lot of ground at decent flow, the other delivers extraordinary force at a single point, and almost nowhere else. The marketing around 5G has consistently overstated what most people will actually experience, and that gap between promise and reality has made the technology easy to dismiss. That's a mistake. The real story isn't speed anyway. It's latency so low it makes things possible that weren't before. Remote surgery, autonomous vehicles coordinating in real time, factory floors full of machines reacting faster than any human could, 100 devices in the same room all running simultaneously without fighting for bandwidth. Those use cases aren't fully here yet. That's the honest position. For most people right now, 5G means a faster download in a city center and not much else you'd notice day to day. The pipe is ready. The world catching up is taking a while. 6G, sixth generation mobile, doesn't exist commercially yet. But the shape of it is clear enough to be worth talking about, and it points somewhere different from every generation before it. Every previous generation was a faster pipe. More data, lower latency, more devices supported. The improvements were real and they mattered, but the fundamental idea was the same each time: make the connection better. 6G research points towards something more fundamental. A network that doesn't just carry information but senses the physical world around it. Think of the difference between a road and the air. Roads are infrastructure you travel on. Air is something you exist inside. Researchers describe coverage so dense that the gap between connected and disconnected becomes meaningless, the way you don't think about whether you're breathing. Practically, that means extended reality without stutter. Virtual and physical worlds layered together with no perceptible delay. Positioning precise enough that your device doesn't just know what city you're in, it knows which lane you're standing in. Communication between devices that happens faster than human perception, enabling coordination at a scale and speed that has no real-world equivalent yet. The network stops being something you connect to and starts being something you move through. Commercial rollout is expected somewhere around 2030, though that date has already shifted once and will likely shift again before the first consumer device ships. But notice the pattern running through every generation in this list. 3G was supposed to transform everything in 2001. It did, just not in any of the ways the launch presentations predicted. 4G's killer apps weren't on anyone's slide deck either. The real use cases only became obvious once developers got their hands on the pipe and started building things nobody had asked for. Every single generation overpromised. Every single one was redeemed by something its inventors didn't see coming. There's no reason to think 6G will be any different. The pipe will arrive. What gets built on top of it is anyone's guess. It always has been.